Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name's Taddy. I'm an astrologer and I make videos on astrology, self-growth, self-care, self-love. So if that interests you, please continue watching, please subscribe. And in this video, I'll be talking about Saturn, the planet, and what it means in your birth chart. And I'm going to go through all the houses so that you can kind of get a general sense of what this means for you. If you're currently in your Saturn return, I have a video on Saturn return in Aquarius, so I'll leave that at the end. But yeah, I think this will be a really interesting video to talk through, to go through. And if you would like to see Saturn in all the zodiac signs, I can make a new video on that, but let me know in the comments if you want that. This was a requested video, so let's just jump right into it. Let's jump right into this. Okay, first off, what does the planet Saturn represent? So Saturn as a planet represents authority, it represents restriction, some people kind of think it represents karma. It could also represent structures, discipline, and also what we feel it's hard work for us. What is hard for us? What is something that we need to master in this lifetime? So this is a really interesting thing to talk about, because when we think about mastery and what we're known for, I think people don't really tend to look at Saturn for this, but Saturn will show you who you need to be, especially after your Saturn return, to really become an authority figure in your life and to leave a legacy as well. Usually the 10th house is all about legacy, but Saturn as a planet is about the systems and structures we have to put in place in order to become the authority figure in our life and to reparent ourselves. So I love Saturn. I also hate Saturn, but don't tell Saturn that, because Saturn is difficult. It is hard, okay? And if you don't know what your Saturn return is, it is when Saturn as the planet transits to the exact same position it was at the time of your birth, usually between the ages of 28 to 31. And that's when you go through some very hard lessons to learn how to adult up, right? It could feel very depressing. It could be very draining. It can be hard. It could be like you're not making progress. You could feel like the thing you want is hard to get, and you're making these realizations of who you are, and it's not where you thought you would be, usually. Sometimes Saturn returns can be blessings in disguise, and usually in the long run, Saturn returns are a good thing. They're a really, really good thing, because then you're teaching yourself that you need discipline and structure to create more freedom in your life. So that's just a bit on Saturn, but let's go through Saturn in the houses and what this means for you if you're going through your Saturn return, or there's also other aspects of Saturn makes. So I'm gonna leave a list of them down below. So if you have your Saturn square, that's also a very difficult time, because that can be just a hard thing that you have to overcome, that you have to make a change in your life in some way or learn a type of lesson. Then you also have your Saturn opposition, and that can also be something external that is confronting you to make a change in your life. And this could be many things. Maybe you go through a breakup, maybe you go through a job change, maybe you need to go into business for yourself, maybe you need to travel and create a new life for yourself, or maybe you're just learning how to stick up for yourself in a new way, or maybe, I don't know, you're pushed to a way to really see a different side of yourself as well. So that's just a general idea of some of the transits, and you usually go through two major Saturn returns. I think that the third is later, like very late in life, but your first Saturn return, you're really, really confronted with how you have to change your life in a dramatic way so that you can take responsibility for your life. And this is so, so important. I did a whole video on taking responsibility for your life, because I'm also in my Saturn return, so this is also from personal experience. But let's just go through Saturn in the houses now. Saturn in the first house is you becoming more disciplined and more structured in your health, in your physical appearance. Maybe it's you learning more about yourself and you're becoming more self-aware. Maybe it's you going to therapy and really learning why you are the way you are, which I think is also just something great to do during your Saturn return or at any time, really, because that's going to help you understand what can you do for yourself to be your own parent, to be who you need to be for yourself and take responsibility for your life and adult up. So Saturn the first can make it like maybe you felt like you weren't able to fully express yourself as a kid. Maybe you felt restricted in this way. Maybe you felt like you couldn't really be yourself. You have to be like a certain way, and maybe a parent was overbearing and like forced you to act a certain way. So that's Saturn in the first house. Moving on to Saturn in the second house, that is you learning more structures and systems for your finances. So maybe it's money management that you have to really learn, or maybe it could be you learning more about your own value and self-worth. And this could be through many things, but it's you really figuring out you are worthy just as you are. You are more valuable just as you are. Maybe it's you asking for a raise at work. Maybe it's you asking for better relationships and you not putting up with the same type of relationship anymore. And you're like, no, I can't do this anymore. Maybe it's you getting a promotion and raise if you're going through your Saturn return, or maybe it's you learning how to keep asking for more because maybe growing up you were really restricted in this, right? Maybe you didn't have enough finances or resources growing up, or maybe you just felt like things were limited, or maybe your own worth was limited. And that's not true at all, but maybe that's what appeared to be during your life, during the early stages of your life. So it's you really learning that that's not necessarily the case, and you need to see your own worth and value and practice this daily, practice this as a discipline, because Saturn is all about discipline and learning how to be there for yourself every single day. So that's something to consider with Saturn in the second. Moving on to Saturn in your third house. Saturn in your third is you creating discipline in how you talk and how you communicate to others, how you present yourself, how you want to connect with other people and friends. Maybe it's you really stopping yourself from comparing yourself to others so you don't compare yourself to friends. Maybe when you were younger, you felt like you didn't have as many friends as you wish you did, or maybe you felt like you had to be a certain way to get friends, or you had to be a certain way to talk or communicate, so that when you're like later on when you're doing your Saturn return or you're having your Saturn return, you're realizing, oh wait, I need to create a system and structure in place so that I can see my own value in terms of my friendships and who I surround myself with. Is their energy good for me? Is the Saturn in the third is also lessons around our siblings if you have siblings. So it could just be you setting boundaries. Saturn is all about boundaries too. So I should really emphasize that. It's like you learning how to set boundaries in your life. So really consider how you set boundaries in your friendships, how you set boundaries in how you communicate, who you communicate with, and what is your limit to how much you communicate. Maybe it's you understanding that, okay, there's some people I don't actually want to communicate with. What is the best way to do this? Maybe it's not ghosting, but maybe it's like, hey, sorry, I can't continue this conversation. Maybe it's you learning what you need to learn in terms of practicing communication. Maybe if there's a language you wanted to learn, this is like a Saturn return in your third house, could be you really taking the discipline of learning a new language. But I really see Saturn in the third house learning more lessons about your childhood and learning about how you had to be there in a way for other people and like be an authority figure in your childhood when it was hard. It was really difficult. Maybe you were forced to take care of other people when you didn't really want to do this as a kid because you weren't You feel like you lost a bit of your childhood in some way. So this varies a lot with the aspects, so please keep that in mind as well. So yeah, that's Saturn in the third house. Saturn in the fourth house is all about taking responsibility for your own introspection of who you are. The fourth house is our roots, it's our family, it's you learning how to set boundaries with your family, it's you learning how to set boundaries with yourself too, of like, what do I learn about myself? What do I need to learn about myself? It's self-awareness of who you are and really learning how to be your own authority figure in your life. You could feel a bit restricted at home. Maybe you don't have the space you want with Saturn in the fourth house. Maybe you feel like you're restricted on where you live. Maybe you feel a bit restricted or structured at home. Maybe you really need to set a schedule for yourself at home because you feel like there's not enough structure in place for yourself. You could feel that Saturn in the fourth is limiting you on your physical surrounding, and that's helping you see more of who you are internally as yourself. So it's this restriction of identity that you learn throughout life of like, who am I? Like, how do I become who I need to be? And Saturn the fourth is such a deep part of ourselves. I really recommend meditation for Saturn in the fourth house because it's been so beneficial for myself because I have Saturn in my fourth and fifth. So that's something to keep in mind for Saturn in the fourth house. Moving on to Saturn in the fifth house. Saturn in your fifth house is a restriction of fun. Maybe you were taught as a kid that you couldn't be an artist, or maybe you were taught that you couldn't express yourself in a certain way. Maybe you were limited as a kid with Saturn in your fifth just to have fun with friends. Maybe you had very overbearing parents that didn't let you express who you were. So Saturn in the fifth house is you learning how to take back your creativity, to learn that everyone is an artist, and to really put out your creative work out there. And it's a lot of hard work because Saturn is all about hard work, but it's you learning how to put your creativity out there in a structured way. What can you do every day that lets you be creative? What keeps you creative? Maybe it's a 5-minute prompt that you do every day. Maybe it's you sketching in a park for 5 minutes. Maybe it's you journaling every day. Maybe it's you speaking on your stories on Instagram, which I do. So you can check out my Instagram if you're interested on that. But it's you learning how to structure your self-expression and become an authority figure in terms of your own artistic practice if you're interested in, in that way. But maybe it's you learning how to have fun again. Maybe it's you also learning how to date again, and dating could be difficult, but it's you learning that you're going to keep going, you're going to keep trying, you're going to keep putting yourself out there and learning who is the best person for you to date, who is the best person to be your partner. So dating is like, it can be hard to have fun with Saturn in the fifth, but it could also teach you what fun really is. What is fun to you, and how can structure actually help you in terms of your creativity, in terms of your fun, in terms of your self-expression. So hope that helps. Now, moving on to Saturn in the sixth house. Saturn in the sixth house, this is tricky. This could be a lot to do with health for you. So maybe you figure out like you need to be very disciplined and structured in terms of your health routine, maybe your diet, maybe how you work out. Saturn in the sixth house is teaching you need to be careful with your physical body and take care of your physical body in the best way possible. Also, with Saturn in the sixth house, you could want to be very disciplined and structured in terms of your day-to-day work. So maybe you get really, really good at scheduling. Maybe you really need to set a schedule, a routine that works for you. So, and really sticking to it, because if you don't, then you're gonna feel a bit bad. And Saturn can also feel like guilt, so, and scarcity. So it's like you could feel like you're not having enough time in your day-to-day. You can feel guilty for eating certain things, but I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go that far. I don't think guilt is necessary for that, but know that Saturn the 6th is teaching you how to take care of your physical body. It's teaching you how to work with what you have in a day in terms of your time, and it's teaching you how can you be there for yourself every single day and what routine really works for you to achieve your goals, to be happier, to be healthier. Yeah, so hopefully that helps. Saturn in the 7th house is you taking responsibility for your relationships. So Saturn the 7th is you thinking about your romantic relationships, your friendships, and being the stable force for them, for your one-on-one partnerships in any form. This is business partnerships as well, but if you're thinking of Saturn in the 7th house, it is you really understanding that you have to be stable and grounded in your relationships, and you have to put in effort. You have to put in more work, and that's okay. You know, it's okay to do that, but you would have to put in more work into your one-on-one relationships, and that could be a beautiful thing. You're going to see more committed relationships from that, but you also have to start this off. And especially during your Saturn return, you're learning who is actually good for you as a partner in business, in relationships, in any kind of one-on-one friendship. So keep that in mind. Saturn in the 7th is really teaching you more about yourself in that way and how you can be there for yourself in comparison to that, but also like which friendships are actually really, really there for you. And also, how can you be the one initiating that structure and being like, okay, I'm gonna see this person this day, I'm gonna like check in with this person, but I'm also gonna take responsibility for my part in relationships. So keep that in mind, especially with conflict. So Saturn the 7th can feel like it's harder to form really deep bonds sometimes in relationships, but once you learn that you can put in the work, you're going to be able to do that. You're going to be able to form those really deep connections. So that's Saturn in the 7th house. Moving on to Saturn in the 8th house. Saturn in the 8th house is you taking responsibility and learning how to be there for your mental health, learning how to be there in terms of your shared resources and taking responsibility for that. So this could be like learning how to invest, learning what, what is your shared resources with your partner or your family that you need to take responsibility for. So maybe it's you learning that you have to manage the resources and finances for other people now, or you need to learn more about your past trauma and really help other people heal, the people closest to you. Saturn the 8th is learning that it can be hard to be intimate with someone. It can be hard to be vulnerable with other people, and you need to put more work into putting yourself into those situations. So maybe it's like joining online communities and sharing in groups because you need a structure and system in place. Or it could be you going to therapy, you going to like scheduling time in with friends to talk about things that are really important to you, you learning more about your ancestry. That's also Saturn in the 4th house, but you learning about your past and your ancestry and your family patterns. I feel like Saturn, in all cases, learning about your family patterns is also very crucial because you're learning how to reparent yourself. So Saturn the 8th house can also be like you feeling restricted in terms of sex, in terms of how to be intimate and vulnerable with someone, and also learning how to take care of yourself mentally and setting those boundaries with people when you feel like you can't be vulnerable in certain places. You have to create those spaces for yourself where it's a safe space. How do you create those safe spaces for you and maybe even other people too? Because you're gonna eventually be the authority figure for other people in terms of that. So yeah, that's Saturn in the 8th house. Let me know if that helps. Saturn in the ninth house is you taking responsibility for your education, for travel, and also like maybe you could learn so much about yourself and how you can take care of yourself when traveling. It could also be that you are learning so much more. Like you might go back to school during a Saturn return in the ninth house. It could also be you just learning that education was not for you growing up. It was hard to learn in an it was very hard for you to learn maybe growing up in a regular classroom setting. So with Saturn in the ninth house people, I feel like alternative education is a lot more easier and beneficial. So maybe that's a different kind of school that you had to go through. Maybe like homeschooling might be better, or certain other kind of schools. But I think Saturn in the ninth is you learning more about your spirituality, making those daily practices. That could be harder for you to do sometimes, but it is so much more beneficial. You feel more rewarded and you feel better when you are able to do that. Saturn in the ninth is also you learning how to self-publish. Maybe you write a book during your Saturn return in the ninth. It could also just be you really putting out work in some form, maybe on social media, maybe a blog, maybe a video, and you trying to put more of that out there and publish and really consider your own knowledge valuable to be shared with other people. So this is so important with Saturn in the ninth house. Moving on to Saturn in the 10th house. Saturn in the 10th is maybe you feel like you couldn't do the career you really wanted to. Maybe you felt like you couldn't be who you wanted to be like growing up. Like maybe your parents were like, you can't be an artist, but you really wanted to be an artist, so you went into a different career. So Saturn the 10th house, when you're having your Saturn return, like how do you make this into the physical world? How do you get your dream job? How do you actually build a system and structure for yourself to do what you really want to do in your work, in your career? Maybe you go into a different field. Maybe you're learning how you can be a boss. Maybe you stay in the job you like, but you transfer over. Maybe you're asking for more money and raises at work, but you're helping other people. You're teaching other people about the work you do. Maybe you're leaving a legacy behind. I think Saturn is always about legacy as well, but you could be creating a legacy for yourself in your career in a way that you didn't expect, but maybe it's something that you wanted to do for so long and you're slowly putting out work, you're slowly putting out the discipline of like applying to more jobs. And Saturn, the 10th house, really teaches you a lot about your father as well. So maybe you're learning more about what your parents kind of felt like they couldn't do in terms of their career, and then how you could personally do something different and do something that you felt like you never could do, and you're releasing those limiting beliefs and you're learning how to take back your own power and strength of creating that system and structure for yourself to get the dream job you really want. So that's Saturn in the 10th house. Let me know if that resonates. Going on to Saturn in the 11th house. Saturn in the 11th is you becoming a teacher, you becoming a professor, a teacher in some way. Maybe it's you becoming the community leader in your friend group. Maybe you create a community. Maybe it's you posting on social media and people see you as an authority figure in whatever field you do. Saturn in the 11th is you could have felt limited in your friendship groups growing up, or maybe you felt like you weren't good enough in terms of the work you're putting out there. Maybe you didn't feel like you were like your work wasn't able to be shared growing up, or your work wasn't worthy of that, but that's not true at all. It was just what you felt. You felt scarce maybe in friends. Maybe you felt like you didn't have enough friends. Maybe you felt like you felt limited in terms of your time with friends. And this is just something to consider. Saturn also rules time. So time is of the essence with Saturn. So you really need to structure your time better in your Saturn return. That's when you feel like you're running out of time. So I wanted to say that. But Saturn the 11th is you learning how to be an authority figure for other people, learning, maybe you're teaching classes, maybe you're teaching other people how to have more friends, to learn more different things. And it can be hard, right? It could be hard to maybe learn social media. Maybe it's hard for you to share your work out there, but you feel like it's so rewarding when you do, and you feel like you feel like most accomplished when you're sharing your knowledge to other people, and especially friends, especially classes. So that's Saturn in the 11th house. Moving on to Saturn in the 12th house. Saturn in the 12th house is you really learning how to be disciplined in your mental health. Maybe it's you learning lessons about family patterns from your past. It could feel like you're restricted in terms of the space you occupy. Maybe you didn't want to be in a certain space, or maybe you felt like you need more time for yourself. You could also just feel like it's harder for you to mentally overcome certain obstacles. But when you practice, maybe you go to therapy, maybe you start practicing like better daily routines to help your mental health, which is what I always recommend for Saturn in the 12th house, like practicing better daily physical routines so that your mental health is better. You could also feel restricted in some way, like Saturn in the 12th house can make you feel restricted, like maybe you feel like you need to be connected spiritually to your ancestors and people from your past, but you need a structure and system in place with Saturn in your 12th house to learn how to be there for yourself and your mental health. Like, how do you prioritize your mental health? How do you find peace? Saturn in the 12th house is you finding peace through structures and systems and boundaries, and learning what is best for your boundaries so you could keep your own peace, and you can know that like you're going to be able to be there for yourself. So really figuring out systems and structures in place for this. Saturn in the 12th house is you maybe creating a structure and system for your spirituality. Maybe it's you learning tarot and astrology. Maybe it's you really connecting to people, like the people. Maybe it's you learning about death and grieving and mourning and creating systems of that. Maybe it's like you creating an altar for yourself and being known as an authority figure for helping others move through grief, move through loss, move through that connection with their ancestors. Maybe it's you learning how to help others heal in beautiful ways. I think Saturn in the 12th house is you becoming an authority figure for healing, right? And I love this so much for Saturn in the 12th house. I think it's like a very powerful placement. So it could be hard in the beginning, but it is worth it. It's such a beautiful thing to learn how to be there for others, especially through their healing process. So I hope this helped. Let me know in the comments if it did, what resonated with you, which house your Saturn is in, and if you want Saturn through the zodiac signs, let me know in the comments. Again, if you're interested in joining an astrology and art-based community to make new friends, to do full moon and new moon rituals, I have the Moon Sign Creative Community. The link for that is down below. It's through Patreon. And if you would like a one-on-one birth chart reading from me and to learn more about your Saturn, to learn more about your Saturn return, or it could just be learning about your chart in general, the link for that is down below. You can book a reading with me, and I'm so happy to help you through whatever you're going through. And I hope this helped. Let me know. And I just want to say the universe has your back, and with peace and love, take care.